Have you ever felt like technology is completely blurring the lines of what it actually means to be human? Well, you're definitely in the right place. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right in to decode one of the most highly influential and, let's be honest, deeply complex essays of the late 20th century. We're talking about Donna Haraway's A Cyborg Manifesto.
Let's take a quick look at our roadmap for this manifesto. We're going to cover Section 1, an ironic political myth, 2, 3 breached boundaries, 3 fractured identities, 4 unity through affinity, and finally, Section 5, embracing our cyborg reality.
Okay, so looking at the source text itself, this is a seriously foundational piece in science, technology, and socialist feminism. Now, because it is a dense, postmodern academic text, our goal today is simply to neutrally translate these challenging viewpoints into clear, visual concepts that you can immediately grasp and take away with you.
So starting off with Section 1, an ironic political myth. To really get a grip on this theory, we have to start with the foundation of the whole thing, the cyborg. Haraway argues that the cyborg isn't just some cool concept out of a sci-fi novel. No, it's actually our lived social reality. Think about it. Modern medicine, modern war, modern production, they all literally couple the organism and the machine. So it's both a world-changing fiction and a very tangible fact of our late 20th century existence. And to explain this, she leans heavily on irony. But she uses irony not as a joke, but as a seriously potent political method. It's all about recognizing contradictions that simply don't resolve into neat little packages, you know? It's the tension of holding incompatible things together because, well, both happen to be entirely necessary and true at the exact same time.
Building on that, she goes so far as to frame her entire essay as an act of blasphemy. Basically, she argues that blasphemy is a way of taking things very seriously from within the traditions of socialist feminism. It's a way of protecting yourself from the rigid moral majority of any group while still insisting that you desperately need community. It's kind of like a rebellion from within.
Which brings us to this absolutely crucial quote. She makes the bold declaration, by the late 20th century, our time, a mythic time, we are all chimeras, theorized and fabricated hybrids of machine and organism, in short, cyborgs. So she's essentially saying we are already cyborgs. We are the fabricated hybrids. And Haraway argues that this cyborg reality fundamentally dictates our modern politics. It's our ontology. It defines our very being.
Moving right along to Section 2, 3 breached boundaries.
Let's look at how this whole concept builds by examining the 3 major boundary breakdowns that Haraway argues make the cyborg reality possible. In Western tradition, these boundaries were absolute, but by the late 20th century, those walls came tumbling down, and the cyborg thrives right in the rubble. First up, the boundary between human and animal. Traditionally, humans were seen as entirely, uniquely separate from the animal kingdom. But Haraway notes that evolutionary theory, biology, and animal rights movements have really polluted the last beachheads of human uniqueness. Whether it's a chimp using a wrench or a crow solving a complex puzzle, language, tool use, and social behavior just don't convincingly separate us anymore. The line is completely blurred. Second, we have the leaky distinction between organism and machine. You see, pre-cybernetic machines were just objects. They were inert. They couldn't move themselves. But today, well, late 20th century machines are autonomous, self-designing, and honestly, disturbingly lively. Meanwhile, we humans often feel frighteningly inert. So the difference between what's natural and what's artificial has become completely ambiguous. Third is the boundary between the physical and the non-physical. We humans are material and opaque, right? But modern microelectronics, which are the absolute essence of our new machines, are invisible, light, and ubiquitous. Haraway beautifully describes them as being made of sunshine. I mean, just think of the Wi-Fi signals or satellite data bouncing around your room right now. They're everywhere, yet nowhere, making the boundary between physical objects and non-physical signals dangerously imprecise. This takes us to Section 3, fractured identities. Having established that we live in this hybrid, boundaryless world, we need to look at how Haraway applies the cyborg metaphor directly to the fractured nature of modern politics. She points out a painful reality. The concept of woman has become incredibly elusive. Fragmentation along every possible fault line has made it nearly impossible to unite under a single essential identity. In fact, that label has often just served as an excuse for the domination of some women by other women based on race, class, or background. So, why does essential unity fail?
Well, she argues that gender, race, and class are highly complex historical achievements, not just simple facts of nature. There simply is no biological or natural matrix that perfectly binds everyone together. Basically, whenever you try to name a single essential identity, you inevitably exclude someone, which just leads to endless splitting and fracturing within political movements.
Okay, let's turn to Section 4, Unity through Affinity. This is where we get to Haraway's proposed solution. If natural identity is just a myth, and essentialism always leads to exclusion, how do we actually build political unity? She highlights scholar Chela Sandoval's concept of oppositional consciousness. This is a really hopeful model, built by women of color, who historically were refused stable membership in broad categories like women or blacks. Because they lacked a single natural identity, they built a powerful postmodern identity out of their specific, contradictory locations in the web of power.
And this flawlessly illustrates the shift Haraway is demanding. On one hand, you have identity, or essentialism, which is based on natural similarities and original unity, but it fails due to historical fragmentation. On the other hand, you have affinity and coalition. This is based on conscious choice and political kinship. Haraway argues this is the required path. We have to abandon the search for natural identification, and instead build unities based on who we consciously choose to fight alongside.
To make this super concrete, she uses the example of a local affinity group called Fission Impossible. Now, this group managed to hold together an incredibly diverse array of people. We're talking witches, engineers, mothers, Christians. I know, it sounds like the setup to a joke, but it was actually a highly effective coalition. They didn't share a natural identity. What they shared was a conscious choice to resist the domination of the nuclear state.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Embracing Our Cyborg Reality.
Let's look at the ultimate takeaway. How does Haraway suggest we actually thrive in this high-tech, post-gender, deeply compromised world? Well, it starts with totally rejecting old origin myths. Traditional humanist frameworks always long for a return to the Garden of Eden, this deep desire to get back to some original state of wholeness. The cyborg, however? The cyborg skips the step of original unity completely. It has no Eden to return to. It is permanently partial, illegitimate, and completely okay with never being fully closed or complete. Because of this reality, Haraway insists on a political struggle of double vision. Single vision just produces terrible illusions. Instead, we have to be able to look at technology and see the terrifying military grid of control while simultaneously seeing the fruitful, liberating possibilities of that exact same technology. We literally have to hold both realities in our heads at once. She concludes with this really powerful thought. Cyborg unities are monstrous and illegitimate. In our present political circumstances, we could hardly hope for more potent myths for resistance and recoupling. Yes, cyborg unities are messy and monstrous by traditional standards, but by fully embracing our partial contradictory identities, by accepting that we are hybrids, we gain the absolute most potent myth possible for political resistance.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. Consider how these blurred boundaries affect you personally. You are already a hybrid, so how do you navigate your own partial, contradictory, and cyborg identity in our high-tech world? And more importantly, how will you use it to build powerful affinities today? Thanks for exploring this fascinating text with us.